leisure labor.
Yeah.
Love, labor, leisure.
No, leisure, labor.
There's no
lust.
There's no love in this.
No, it's leisure.
Well, there's
labor.
lust.
Yeah.
There's lust, but there's no
Which is
love.
Well, there is certainly love in this story, but it's in the, well, oh my God, it's so complicated. Yeah, there is.
Can you tell us what this play is about?
Yes, I started working on this play in 2014, so 4 years ago. I got re-obsessed with Edith Wharton novels, and I reread a lot of them, and I fell completely into this love with this sumptuous world. And I had read her in high school; it didn't really do anything for me. And then I read Ethan Frome, Age of Innocence, The House of Mirth, and I just was like, oh my God, what can I do with this? And this was a woman in the turn of the century, 1900s to like 1910s and 20s, who was a woman who was the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize, the most muscular novelist I've ever really experienced. And I was like, what can I do with this? I just was like, I got to do something. So I went through and started looking at her imagery, and there's something. There are these beautiful images aside from the beautiful words. The images are amazing. Then I read that when she was 47 years old, she had an affair with a 30-year-old bisexual man. And I was like, okay, that's where it is. That's what it is. That's and like bisexuality at the turn of the century, like it was like, that was a totally different, there was no word for it. It was just, this was a man who was willing to be, he was very open about it. His name was Morton Fullerton, and he was like a socialite. Some people thought he was a con man. He was sort of immersed in the social scene of New York around the turn of the century. Then I did more research on Wharton, and she had a husband named Teddy Wharton, who was severely mentally ill, what we would probably call just general bipolar disorder, but back then he had a very difficult life, drove her insane, no one knew what was wrong with him. So that was the love triangle. Totally fatuous, I made that up, but I fell in love with the idea of a bisexual man, a mentally ill man who I invented was also gay, and then I have the sort of female novelist character, and that was it. Beyond that, it's all my own invention. And it was just this lush and lavish world for me to play around in. So I wrote the first act, and then the first act opened up these leisure, and then the first act opened up all these enormous questions. We performed it at Jack in 2014, and I was like, oh my God, there's all these questions. People seem interested in this. So I wrote the third act, and then last year I wrote the second act. So I wrote it all out of order, and you can tell when you see it, the play is told completely out of order. So it is I hate saying that it's a period piece, because I don't think that's fair to the work itself. It's a wholly contemporary story, totally experimental in narrative. It's told in like time folds, it's told in flashbacks, it's told in fast forwards, it almost has a new media feel, which I've done a lot of work in too, but in narrative. And that's what's so fun about it. The audiences have been really like, it feels like a experimental downtown play, but it's like in the 1900s. It's like amazing, the response, and all we're doing is telling the story in this insanely twisted way.
So in terms of not wanting to call it a period piece, it's contemporary themes, but in period dress. So what can we say about repression? Because Edith Wharton is all about repression, but how are we repressed now?
The one thing I do it, and I think everybody does it, is they repress their everybody's smiling in everything. You know what I mean? Like, you don't show like the before misery and then the smile and then the after the photo misery. I think there's that. Like, we don't see that. And that parallel is just, for me, like really enormous.
So cinema is usually a big part of the work that you do on stage.
Well, when I work with my husband, Reed Farrington, who's directed my last piece, Casablanca Box, it is. When I'm working on my own, I don't want to use anything.
Oh, okay. So
ever.
You weren't thinking about like Scorsese or like the Terrence Davis House of Mirth for this at all?
I think Scorsese's Age of Innocence is like one of the greatest movies ever made, and I think it's his best movie. Somebody said to me once that they thought it was his most violent movie, which is like, and that's where the Wharton comes in. It's like when you are so repressed in the way that you're expressing yourself that like a woman putting a boot on an ottoman becomes wildly manipulative. Like a woman just showing her ankle to Daniel Day-Lewis is like, I can't even look at that. That becomes this act of violence, toward him. And she knows she's doing it. That stuff is so sexy.
I was like, I guess boys will be boys, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I loved Lust.
Oh, you did?
It was so sexy.
Oh, wait till you see the guys do it. Oh my God.
It was like even filthy.
Oh my God. Christopher Toko and Kyle Stockberger play the sort of male couple in this. And again, it's just in the proximity of negative space where the sex comes in, you know?
I want to ask you, like, the last thing, the ultimate question in, like, Wharton world. Yeah. Are you team Countess Oleska or team May Archer?
Oh no, are you kidding me? I feel like I am Ellen Olenska. I really feel like I am. And it's too bad, it's sad about Winona Ryder, but who plays her in the movie. That character of Countess Olenska was Wharton. She was a divorcee. Wharton ended up getting divorced, which back then was like, you can't get divorced. You know, but she had a perfectly reasonable reason. When she at one point, Wharton went away to Paris, and when she came back, Teddy had, I think, sold her house, the Mount, where we performed. We have this sort of ongoing residency there. We've performed this play in the Mount for 2 years. She came home and it was gone. He used to embezzle out of her checking. She had every reason in the world to divorce him, but it was just not something you did back then. Mm-mm. So here we have this Countess Olenska, who is a divorcee, so she's just completely frowned upon right off the bat. She's got this foreign-sounding last name, and she has this passionate affair with Daniel Day-Lewis that is nothing. They don't touch each other. They never even are hardly in a room together, and it's like the sexiest love affair you can imagine because of that, you know. And I really channeled that in this. I think that idea of like where's the intimacy, you know? Is it in like fucking on stage? Definitely not. It's in the like sitting next to someone in a theater, you know, and not touching them. It's in the like sideways glance, you know. That's where all the fun stuff is for me. The manners, the lack of manners. So it's really fun. It's a really fun play to watch because of that.